What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Life Creative Podcast. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about your data that you gather and how it's only as useful as the way you use it, if you use it at all. So let's go ahead and get into it. What am I talking about here? Well, we gather data, right? We either gather it intentionally or unintentionally. And I am talking about a whole ton of different things, and I'm going to give you some examples. So maybe you see an article and you either read it or you think to yourself, that sounds interesting, and you want to read it later on. So you click some button in some piece of software, or you maybe tear it out of a magazine, or you put a little note or bend a corner in a book, any of those kind of things, right? Now you've got it, you're going to go back to it later. And it's easier than ever to do that now, especially, digitally. It's so easy to just click a button and save it somewhere and so on. Or maybe you're gathering statistical data from a website or an application or podcasting service or whatever it may be. Some bunch of statistics are coming in and they're all there for you to look at. Google Analytics is a good example of that, right? I have Google Analytics on my websites. And, it pulls in a whole ton of data. Arguably, it's Google, right? So it's a way more data than you should ever need. And maybe, there's the side question or side debate about whether that's good or bad and whether that should be allowed to happen to begin with. But anyway, point is, a whole bunch of data's coming in. Or you're listening to some audio and you think, hey, that's really cool. So maybe you save that somewhere or you make a note of it to go back and listen to it again. These are all ways of gathering data, right? Maybe people call you and you've got voicemails on your phone or some service, or you have some fancy thing that records audio and sends it to you in email. For that matter, maybe people send you emails. Maybe you've got newsletters. These are all ways that we gather data. But here's the problem. Do you go back and look at all these things? Do you use them? Because what's the point in gathering it all if you never go back and use it? It's pointless. Have you sat there and sometimes said to yourself as you're actually gathering it, I'm probably never going to go back to this? I mean, these are all flags, right? If you're going to gather something, you should use it, because otherwise, what's the point? And when you do use it with intention. Why are you reading this? Why are you looking at these numbers, listening to this audio? There has to be a follow-on action, right? So, for example, if you read a whole bunch of statistics on your website, like I did this week, I sat down with a notepad because I said to myself, okay, you know what? There's a lot of things I do after a podcast is published. But do I need to be doing them all? Now, I believe I do, but does the data back it up? So this week I took a conscious effort and said, okay, I sat down and I looked. Does, a post that I put up on one of my blogs, does that get any traffic at all? Because if it doesn't, why am I doing that every week when statistical data over the past months, years, whatever, tells me it's not being read, or it's only one or two people, something like that? That is important data right there, because it tells me, look, you spend 30 minutes, an hour, whatever, preparing this thing and putting it out there every week, and it's not used by anybody. Doesn't necessarily mean it's a failure or anything like that. That's not what we're talking about. It's a flag to say, well, if nobody's using it, should I continue to do that? Maybe it's just a simple case of I'm posting it to the wrong place, right? People don't go there to find that thing, whatever it may be, and there's no value in me posting it there other than consuming time. So I need to knock that on the head and not do that. Focus on the areas where people do go to get that and give them a better return on their valuable time of coming to visit it. I couldn't do that if I didn't analyze the data, right? Same with podcasts. And I'm not talking about obsessing about the numbers. I'm talking about using the numbers in a meaningful way. If you see, for example, and this is not a great example, but it tells you a lot. For example, my Compile Swift podcast over at compileswift.com. It is about the Swift programming language. That's an Apple thing. So it is no surprise at all that when I look down the list of podcast players that play that podcast, by far the biggest percentage is the Apple Podcasts app. It's not about what I think of that app. That's just telling me most of my audience comes from the Podcasts app, not Spotify, not all the third-party fantastic apps out there, things like that. So that tells me right there, I need to make sure that it's always good for the Apple Podcasts app and that it plays correctly and that I should check it and make sure it sounds nice and there are no problems, because that data is telling me that's where my biggest audience is for that. Now, on the flip side, there's a slightly bigger percentage on Spotify for this podcast, the Life Creative Podcast. It's not Apple specific in any way. It's not specific to any platform. It's a kind of a general quote unquote topic, right? So the podcast players are spread out across lots of different platforms, lots of different apps, because it's not being used by someone who's, like using an Apple machine to do Apple development. So they tend to use Apple tools. Hope you follow me there. So the point here is all of this comes back to say, look at your data, right? I went through earlier today, I sat down with a cup of coffee and I went through my entire saved list of things in the Pocket app, right? Go to getpocket.com if you don't know what that is. It's a way to, rather than just bookmarking, it kind of captures a web page when I'm viewing it and stores it in Pocket for me so I can see it in there. It's kind of like clipping things into your own magazine is how I would describe it. I sat and went through them all, and it was crazy to me how old some of them were because I was not regularly going back and reading them. So I took time today, a conscious effort, to sit and go through and say, okay, I need to read this now, or figure out, have I read it? Do I need it for the future and archive it, or should I just delete it? And you got to be ruthless about these things, right? It's like clearing out that email inbox. You've got to decide, what am I going to do with this, and then do it. And you've got to be ruthless about it. It is so easy to talk yourself into storing everything forever, knowing full well half of it you're never going to go back and use. This is all important stuff to get you back, like I'm always saying, getting you back the time that you need to do the things you need to be doing, but also learning from the things that at some point you felt were beneficial for you and you never went back to look at them. So think about that. Think about all the things you're storing in all the places. How often do you actually go back and take advantage of all this wonderful information that you're storing? And I bet you will find stuff in there that you completely forgot about. So my suggestion is also, why not set aside a regular time? Like, for example, I say to myself, okay, Saturday or Sunday night is a good time for me to sit and look through all the things that I've gathered in the week and figure out what I want to do with them. The nice thing about Pocket, and I'm not sponsored by them or anything, is it gives me a rough estimate of how long it takes for me to read an article. So if it says like 5 minutes, 2 minutes, I should sit and read that right there when I see it, because it's only going to take a few minutes. I can read it, decide, do I want to keep it for the future? Have I consumed the knowledge I need to consume? Or do I, now that I've got it, just trash it because I've read it, right? You got to be ruthless about these things and deal and understand and learn and take the benefit from all of this data that we have coming into us these days, and that we are intentionally storing and are more than likely not doing anything with quite a lot of it. Think about that. That's it for this episode. I would love to hear your thoughts about this. You can reach out to me on Twitter at Graphics Media. If this has been beneficial or you want to comment, why not go to buymeacoffee.com/PWCOM, and this episode will be listed there, and you can, leave me a comment And if you want to, give me a tip and buy me a cup of coffee, I'd greatly appreciate that as well. Thank you, everyone. I will speak to you in the next one.